Representative Hicks.
Haven't stood up all session. Today I've popped up for the third time to talk about a bill. This bill, however, I'm not carrying, but I do want to say a few words. The bill is actually a dilemma for me. Everything the representative from 100 Valleys of the Umpqua said is true and accurate, and the intentions that brought this bill to the floor today are unassailable. However, nothing is ever as simple as it appears at first, and this bill is far more complicated and I dare say controversial than what meets the eye. First, as to the way it got here, the timeline of this memorial is absolutely indicative of the good intentions that brought it here. The momentum to pass this memorial actually preceded the release of the details about what this particular bill that we're urging Congress to pass includes. In other words, when it got started over on the other side of the building, our good Senate friends did not have the benefit of the details of what's in the ONC proposal, which we now have. And so examining what's in it, we need to take a careful moment of pause at least. The part that I'm concerned about is Section 502, and one of the parts I'm concerned about, chiefly concerned, is Section 502. This bill sets aside 58,100 acres of the rogue wilderness in my district as wilderness. It changes the designation from forest property to wilderness, and this carries with it significant issues. Basically, what we're talking about with wilderness is we're closing the roads. The proponents in Congress have suggested that this will enhance tourism, but the problem is currently tourists can access this particular swath of Oregon by either the river, through permits that they are issued by the federal government, or on foot, or by the roads that also serve for fire protection and law enforcement, marijuana grows and the like. Police officers are able to go in and get to it that way. Closing off the roads is going to close off one area for the tourists to get to this place, this newly designated wilderness. In other words, this is going to be not good for tourism, but bad. We're going to see fewer tourists. Our congressional delegation has confirmed that there is no plan to increase the number of rafting permits going through, and so the numbers just don't add up in terms of that particular industry. In fact, I've heard from some constituents that this could cause some of our tourist-based businesses to go under, so to speak. The bill's intention regarding the wilderness area to protect old growth is, quite frankly, 40 years too late. Much of this has already been logged. It's regeneration that's out there now. Someday in a couple hundred years, it could be old growth again, but it's not old growth right now. There are people living there. Their property values are going to be adversely affected under the nature of a wilderness plan. This is not popular where I come from. Now turning to the substance of what our congressional delegation is trying to achieve. Indeed, cutting more trees is what they're planning to do with one half of the property, but protecting it through the environmental laws is what they're trying to do with the other half. That sounds fine, but we need to think about which half we're talking about. Which half is going to be the part that's permitted to log, and which half is going to be the part that's not. This is a critical question. If we're cutting it in half, we need to know these kinds of details, because not all of this property is even loggable or harvestable. According to Section 1181A of the ONC Act, or ONC timberlands, which are unique, it's a unique form of federal property, are to be managed for, quote, permanent forest production with timber to be sold, cut, and removed in conformity with the principle of sustained yield for the purpose of providing a permanent source of timber supply, protecting watersheds, regulating stream flow, and contributing to the economic stability of local communities and industries, and providing recreational facilities. Certain controversies of the past have caused Congress to, instead of allowing logging on this 2.3 million acres of Oregon property, instead of allowing logging, it's been closed more or less down, and they're just sending us payments in lieu of the logging. This is essentially a contractual arrangement that Congress is now deciding they're now declining to honor. In other words, the contract had been, if you don't log this property, we will send you money. Now Congress is saying we're going to stop sending you money, but we don't want you to log the property either. So instead of just living up to the terms of the contract, they are...
Representative Boone yields.
Thank you, colleague. They are changing the nature of the contract after it's apparently going to go into breach. That's not what we need to do. The logging will not result, per the timber industry experts, in any kind of short-term panacea for Oregon's economically distressed ONC counties. It could be, after all the surveys of species and habitats, etc., have been completed, upward to 2 years before we can actually start cutting down some trees. And that's if nobody sues under the Endangered Species Act. The proposal in Congress says explicitly that the Endangered Species Act continues to apply to this property as it does to other private property. If nobody, which means that somebody could, if they wanted, sue and tie this question up in the courts for many years to come. The only difference between the current situation and that situation being that we're now talking about half the amount of property. Additionally, certain people in the forest industry, perhaps they're paranoid, but they're a little bit concerned about the implications of this new designation and its Endangered Species Act implications for the Forest Practices Act, which is actually quite forgiving. In other words, private property, the Endangered Species Act is quite forgiving as opposed to public property. Could this result in a new lawsuit for even private property, for a forest held as private property? That may be over concern, but nevertheless, these people have been in litigation for a lot of years, and certainly they're not interested in doing that anymore. This proposal faces an uphill battle in Congress anyhow. We could get into details of that, but this is not my understanding. This is not the bill. The alternative bill is proposed by the committee chair, Doc Hastings, and so getting through him is certainly a challenge that lies ahead. So, thank you for everyone who supports the ONC counties, for everyone who supports my county and the situation that we're up against. This is dire. We need to do something. The question is surely to be resolved at the federal level. Thank you to the Senate for sending us this opportunity to lend our moral support to doing something about the situation. But, and again, I impugn nobody who today still believes in the bill enough to support it and believes in our counties. Thank you as well. But for my part, being as familiar with this situation as I have come to be, I'm not prepared to support this resolution. I want to flag it with at least my note of dissension so that if and when it does go up to our federal counterparts, they'll understand that there is much work to be done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion, Representative Clem.